guys, so today I'm going to talk to you about what I think is quite possibly one of the most important things that you could need to know in your life, which is how to read the Bible. So, I'm no theologian. I don't really come from an area of speaking about this in a scholarly way, but rather just as a Christian, as somebody who is really passionate about like what the Bible and reading it every day has done in my life and in the lives of people that I've seen around me. I think it's critical for people who are interested or who feel like they want to know to kind of just know like, hey, none of us really knew where to start, but these are just my ideas and tips for regular people who kind of want to get into it, but maybe it seems overwhelming. So the first thing is there are 66 books in the Bible. So from Genesis to Malachi would be what we call the Old Testament, or that's what Jewish people refer to as their Torah. And then from Matthew until Revelation is what we would call the New Testament. So altogether that's 66 books, and the New Testament is basically the part that came after Jesus as we know it came down to earth. So when we separate those two, just know that when you're reading the New Testament, you're going to read things that were actually said by Jesus. You're going to read accounts of, his works and his miracles, and as well as what happened after he left earth. A lot of what we know now, knowing Christ, is like almost like foreshadowed in the Old Testament, in a sense where a lot of the things that they talk about that might not have made sense had you not back then, or had you not now read the New Testament, you can read it with a whole new lens and see a lot of things that you wouldn't have even picked up, reading it isolated. My first tip would be to kind of start with the New Testament, which is again just my opinion, but I found that the reason I wanted to start really reading the Bible was when I started a whole new walk with God and accepted Jesus into my life. I wanted to know about what his works and like what he said, and I just found it easier to first connect with that piece of the Bible. It's like when you're reading it, like you'll see the words of Jesus are, in most Bibles they're printed in red, so you can see what he actually said versus the account around what was going on. So I'd say start with that, also because it's shorter, and not that really matters, but in a sense like it feels a little bit more manageable because you're like, okay, I'm gonna handle these 4 books, and that the first 4 books in the New Testament are Matthew, Mark, John, and Luke. I want to say I always mix them up, but oh wait, I got it right. Okay, Matthew, Mark, John, and Luke. And they're basically the kind of like his disciples who are accounting pretty much the same version of events, each with a different spin to them, if you will. I feel like the way I'm explaining it is probably not formal biblical knowledge, but like I said, I'm doing this for people who just want to know how to read this or how to approach this. So like I said, those were the people who rode with Jesus, so it's an account of his acts and his miracles and his words and what he wants us to hear from him. And then after that, you go through after Jesus ascended to heaven, you go into the acts that his apostles, the people that he left behind, went on to continue to do miracles, and the different churches that became established. The church as we know it became established after Jesus came down. So just a bunch of other accounts in relation to that. And then I kind of after I familiarized myself with that, like I said, it lent a new context when I was ready to really dive back into the Old Testament. It lent a new context to that to kind of help me see it in a certain way. My second suggestion is to not feel like you need to read it straight through. Obviously not, because I just told you to read the end, so to speak, before the beginning. But don't feel like you need to I started this chapter, I started in Genesis, I need to read Genesis from page 36 all the way on to page 40, and then I'm gonna go on to the next book. It doesn't work like that. The Bible is I like to say, or people like to say, that it's the living word of God. So it's it's alive, it's not just a book, a novel that you read from cover to cover. It's I've heard Pastor Michael Todd, he says the Bible is the book that reads you, which basically that means it's gonna tell you about yourself. It might tell you what you need to hear for that day through a word or through a message. So don't feel I used to make it feel like it was a chore, I gotta read okay, I have to finish this one before I can move on to the next one. It's like, no, you just need to read what you feel, or what God is telling you that he wants to expose you to for that day or for that season or that chapter of your life and where you are in your walk. So feel free to jump around. Like if there's something that maybe like you've heard of or something that your pastor reads in church, you can read that and then, go back and read whatever else around it at any time. And number 3, it kind of is similar to what I said about number 2, but I would say that how do I word this properly? Kind of like, it can seem a little daunting to read the Bible at first because you might read it and not understand, or you might open up to a book and be like, like there's times where they're just listing off genealogy and people's names and pieces of history that you don't understand, or even spiritual things that you don't understand. So don't be intimidated by it. And let's say you give it a try, or you go crack it open today after this, and then you're like it didn't speak to me. I feel like, this is again just my personal opinion, but I feel like God wants you to seek him out. He wants you to seek out the mysteries, in a sense, of what he has for you here, right? So it might be for me, there was a time where I never really knew what to go to, so I would just randomly on that day, sometimes I still often do this to this day, just open it. Just literally just open it, and whatever that was, I'd read that piece for the day. Sometimes sometimes it might be even you just focusing on a verse. A verse, basically, let me rewind for a second. So the way that it's laid out is basically the book is the name that you see at the top corner. So when we talk about Isaiah, Mark, Genesis, Revelation, all of those things are the book. That's the very first thing you'd look for. What book am I in? Then you move on to the chapter, and the chapter is going to be, or if the book is up top, the chapter is going to be the larger number that you see anywhere on the page, like a 43 or a 2, whatever. And then the tiny number that you see at the very beginning of the line, that's how you know the verse. Which verse am I in? So if someone says to you, hey, we're in the book of Isaiah, you maybe go to the table of contents and be like, okay, Isaiah's on page blah, 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 blah. Fast forward, now you're in the book. And then you go on to find the chapter, flip through, okay, yeah, it's chapter 45, oh, here it is. And then you jump down to the verse. So, okay, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's how you know the exact line that somebody is referring to. Back to where I was before. So sometimes I would just randomly open, and like I said, it sounds crazy, but literally the message that needed to be read by me at that time, on that day, at that moment, would be everybody can find something in the same verse. It might not mean to me what it means to you, or it might speak to your situation that I don't even know about differently than it speaks to my situation. But this is everlasting. It's always, it's if you think about it, this is the one book that has withstood the test of time. It's probably the book that most people in the world have come in contact with or have in their home, and there's a reason why it's been surviving for many years. Don't be intimidated. Come back again. Like I said, maybe you just read a verse today and you read it, you meditate on it for a second, you think about what it means, and I like to journal about what they mean. That's just the way that almost a deeper way that I can pray and talk to God, and also just process. For you, it might just be, like I said, opening this and taking a few turns at it before it starts to speak to you. And like I said, it starts to read you, and you start to feel, you're going to get to a point where you almost feel like this is the most engaging thing of your day. I don't even have, I kid you not, y'all, I don't even need to have Netflix, have Hulu, have anything. I don't have cable, I don't have any of those, right? Now I might got some logins in case I ever want to watch them, but this is to me the most interesting, not that it's not in the form of entertainment, but it's the most valuable, the most powerful content that has ever been written, notated, or read by me. So give it a shot, and I know that God is gonna use it to speak to you and to just touch your life and change your life in the most powerful way, and you will never ever say you regret it when you committed yourself to starting to read the Bible. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it helps, and if there's anything else that you think that I didn't answer, or that you want me to talk about more, or my experiences, like I said, how I process it, how I apply it to my life, or for me to share with you some other people's experiences, then let me know.